Welcome back to our next edition of A Bit of Light Relief. Today, God help us, we have the gorgeous Jordan Barry-Bayliss.
He's back. And sadly for me, I'm back on the sofa with the Northern contingent, aren't I? Which is
plenty of flattened vowels today.
She's in a minority, but
I
we are going to
unfortunately.
support her through that categorisation, aren't we?
This is an HR podcast after
We are
all.
going to support you about that minority status that you've
very
got.
happy about that. Thank you.
With that in mind, actually, we are here to support our HR community and the business world in general. This is about us having a little bit of fun whilst dealing with actually some quite serious topics.
Yeah.
So I'm Jeanette Ramsden, CEO of the Curve Group.
Kelly York, Chief Operations Officer at the Curve Group.
I'm Jordan Barry-Bayliss. I'm the founder of Peach.
Well done, that's lovely.
We
Well
never
done.
got that right before, did we? I always forgot that to introduce myself.
Yeah.
And
We're doing well, to be fair.
I did quite well.
Good,
I
good
passed the
time.
test. I can go now, can't I?
And I actually did that thing of saying well done. Isn't that dreadful? Oh my God.
Well done, well done.
Right, I better be quiet from now on. So what have you been up to?
Oh God, what a loaded question.
Yeah.
I've been setting my business up. And
Do you want to give us a gratuitous plug with the D?
For Peach.
so I set up a business called Peach, and basically the purpose of what I wanted to do, having had a lived experience of what it's really like to work on the C-suite, the good, the bad and the ugly, is to completely change the face of executive development and performance and actually provide a completely holistic end-to-end solution to drive C-suite performance in an environment that's very different. Because we know now that things are changing so fast and the world has changed so significantly, C-suites are not prepared for that.
Yeah.
So there's things that we used to be able to get away with, and the lack of support, the lack of alignment, people just being left to it. Those are the things that are really going to matter, I think, in 2026. In order to drive business performance, because margins are tighter than they've ever been, nobody's making any profit. These are the things that organisations are going to have to get right. So that's what I've been doing.
And do you feel happy about talking the journey that sort of led you to Peach, really?
Oh my God, this is like being interviewed by Michael Parkinson, isn't it?
A slightly better looking version.
Very
hopefully.
better looking.
Slightly.
Yeah. A lot better looking.
Yeah, he was an elder as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, so look, I mean, I've had the privilege of working on some amazing C-suites that work really, really well. I've also worked on C-suites that are like most C-suites where, you know, the lack of alignment, lack of trust, you know, all of those types of things. And that's not a criticism, by the way, of the C-suites that I sat on. It's just almost feels like it's an accepted norm.
Yeah.
And actually the reason I wanted to design Seascape, which is this end-to-end executive performance solution, was because I actually wanted to provide a level of proper support to C-suite executives that allowed them to navigate the reality of what it's like to work around the top table. Because, you know, I think something like, I can't remember the exact stats off the top of my head, it's all in the stuff that I've been working on, but you know, 80%, I think, or between 70 and 80% of C-suite leaders would take a role that was better for their mental health, better for their well-being if the opportunity was there. Burnout was at 55%, and mental health, and it just goes on and on and on. And I've been there, and I think also as an executive coach, you are entrusted with a whole heap of information with the leaders that you work with, and the reality is burnout is rife.
We certainly get a lot of
The culture
observe an awful lot.
and actually, and I want to change that. So because really, if you boil it all down, the nature of support and the way that we have developed executive teams hasn't changed for years. It's static, decades old methodologies designed for a world that no longer exists. And there's a whole heap of information that isn't captured as part of that process to give organizations and CEOs and chairs in particular the information that they need to know how to really build the team that they have for today, for today's problems. So it's a very different kind of animal.
And
You were speaking at a conference. I was so proud of you for this one. Kelly did this sort of the mic drop moment and basically started the conference so that she was speaking up by saying, being a leader is not easy, which I just went down terrifically well, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It's tough. Like, being a leader is tough. I think the evolving landscape, there are lots of different things to deal with. There's lots of considerations that they need to take into account, and actually managing people is even tougher than it ever has been as well. And I think
what, you mean we're not going to go all be replaced by AI?
Well, and that's it. And people are worried about their jobs, their prospects, how they're going to reskill, what that means to them. They don't know if that actually is true or not. So there's lots of kind of things on there. And it was a really, a moment where it's like, actually, we need to recognise that. Yeah. But on the contrast of that, we've got leaders that are perhaps not as good as you would expect them job hugging. So we've got people that are staying in roles that they probably shouldn't be in. Because of the world that it is at the moment, that we know there's development required across the board, really. And like you said earlier, the world's a very different place now, and actually the way we've trained people and the expectations we had of them is actually so different, but we've not invested that time.
I think you are spot on with this. And what's really interesting, I would describe the current period of time as a massive period of stress and uncertainty.
Yeah, I agree.
So actually, even if you dial back, even if you go a level below the skills that need to change around the top table, for me, it's around what are the fundamental basics and ingredients of high performance. Yeah. So unfortunately, when you're in a stress situation, your worst characteristics come out. So things like trust, alignment, shared strategy, all of those things are really, really important. Yeah. And what we're finding in the current market, because there's so much strain, there's so much stress, it's so overwhelming being a leader, that the capacity, the headroom to be strategic, to focus on the things that you need to do isn't there. And that's not because they're not capable of doing it. That's because the systems that we have grown up in and the systems that we are aligned to within organizations don't work anymore. And they're designed for a business world 30 years ago. And it's interesting. I guess a good example I could share, some of the work that I've done recently, would be around the work that I've been doing with venture capitalists, with new fledgling organizations, just in terms of how we are redesigning and designing businesses from scratch in a completely different way to how large corporates are structured, around hierarchy, around status. And those are the things that are going to need to change. And actually, it's so hard to change a system, isn't it, Kelly?
It really is.
It's not the individuals, it's the actual system. And we are so indoctrinated in operating within the parameters of that system. It's really hard to change systems in organizations.
And then it's not just, it's a system, and then it's the new skills that you need, the behaviours that you need to embody that. It's lots of different things, isn't it? And it's a different world, and we're not quite ready to almost deal with it. And nor do we have kind of the history or background to be able to apply what we commonly know into the new scenarios.
And we're all kind of learning as we go and failing fast. And let's be really clear with AI, and I think that's a big one that you talked about. AI is going to be an advantage until everybody's deployed it, and then we're all in the same spot. So
how do you
not
get your
silver bullet
I
that I think we think it is.
And I believe that the whole trying to get your leaders, but actually the whole of your workforce, focusing on the growth horizon, I think is a real issue for all of us, actually. I really do. And so I guess that leads me on to my next question, and to move us along slightly before we get sort of down a rabbit hole or a particular soapbox, is what changes do you feel that organisations need to be making to get ahead then? What would your advice be around that?
I think that's a really good question. So obviously my work largely focuses at the top of the organisation on C-suites in particular, because that's my experience and that's where I want to invest my energy, because I want to change the landscape for those people having lived it. What's really interesting for me, and one of the things that we talk about in my, that's a gratuitous plug, in my business pitch, is what we've actually done as part of our take it off me, I can't stop, is so we have revolutionized executive profiling in a way that the whole litmus test for me was when we present this data, and I call it through multiple lenses. So we would look at leaders individually and as a collective team through multiple data lenses that haven't been used before, in order, if you're a CEO or a chair, to get the information on your C-suite and go, oh, wow, it's an aha moment. So I call that bringing people to life in ultra high definition, so that you see things.
I
about
love
the
that,
people.
by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's just
really
a
like
nice-
that a lot.
I'm kind, you know,
Yeah.
I've come up with all these like unusual sound bites that seem to have become part of our narrative as a business. But for me, it's about we have a very static view of how people are supposed to present. And actually, let's take, for example, if you're a senior executive, let's take what's your motivation, what's your purpose, what do you believe in, what are the quality of your relationships outside of work. Let's look at some of that stuff first, so that actually some of the data that we used to bring people to life, so that you as a business can go, you know, I didn't actually know that about Kelly, but now I do know that. That gives me a completely different perspective of whether we keep Kelly, how we develop Kelly, or whether Kelly's not fit for the future.
Kelly's definitely going to be kept, though, isn't she?
But based on what I've seen from Kelly, I'm not sure. No, I'm not.
Kelly's very good. Grade A, star.
She's very good. So I've heard. I believe so. And I've got a T-shirt on underneath here, actually. I keep touching my mic. Sorry about that. So I think that's one key thing. So I think we're going to have to look at who we have in a different way. You've said a great point before, Kelly, about the fact that let's be really clear in the current environment, particularly in the UK, which is contracting probably faster than a lot of
Anywhere
markets
else,
at the moment.
yeah.
And we really need to lean into that as leaders. What happens in that period of contraction is that innovation goes, growth goes, and these are the points that you were making before, and that's the death of an economy.
Yeah.
So we really need to be very cognizant as senior leaders, as executive committee members, on actually in a market that's kind of in free fall, or at best it's certainly unpredictable and highly volatile, how do we maintain growth and how do we maintain innovation? And also how do we then transfer that to the workforces that we work in? I mean, we've talked consistently about the engagement crisis in organisations. People are fearful because of AI. So I think different data on your senior team so that you really know what you do. I think also in my world, I would think, based on what I've seen, that there are very few executive committees who are ready for the future. And that's not a criticism of them. That's just the state of play. So the idea that we used to have 10 years ago, if someone's not right, we just replace them. Everybody's starting from scratch. So how do you build these new skills? What are they? How do you get a top team plugged into AI? Stuff like that, really, for me. And the growth thing, I think, is really important because profits aren't going to be, you know, continue to, they're just not.
And I think back to that, you know, we talk a lot about skill. There's skill and then there's behavioural and needs for each candidate employee. We focus so much on skill, but given everything is being re-skilled, the behavioural point in leadership is so
And
much more
attitude,
important. Attitude, behaviours, cultural alignment, all of those things that is forgotten about often in the recruitment process now.
Yeah.
It's more important than ever, isn't it?
And I wonder as well, Kelly, I think if you see one common denominator and consistent theme for me is the stuff that we've talked about, with the stuff that we know as HR practitioners, the stuff that really makes a difference in terms of high performance, which is your culture, which is your behaviour of your leadership, which is your living the values in the business. It's about your employee engagement. When profit in an easy market, those things are easy to tick along.
They
and
become more
ignore.
natural. Yeah.
What's interesting for me is the best businesses do those in the best times and the worst times. And I think in the worst times, the organisations who are the market leaders at culture, performance, having difficult conversations, doing all the things that good leaders do, the gap is going to become even broader between most organisations and the very best, because the very best will continue to do exactly what they've always done, and it will matter more in a difficult market. So I'm just hoping that a lot of CEOs and kind of chairs and CPOs get ahead of the curve and understand that this isn't just nice stuff to do. This is going to be the difference between whether your business makes any profit whatsoever. Because also, what did we used to be able to do? We used to be able to cut headcount. And we used to be able to cut and cut and cut, and then we could always make the buffer through, you know, repurposing those kind of funds into, well, those days are gone as well. So there's no more fat in the system to cut. So again, it's
And
just...
people are assuming that things are going to get back to normal.
And
There is no normal.
I agree, and I don't think they are.
Yeah.
I think...
having those difficult conversations, but also asking the questions in the first place,
Yeah.
I think is absolutely going to be key. And you mentioned something when we were sort of having a brief outline about what we're going to talk to you about
5
today.
minutes prep that we
Pros.
It's all very scheduled and planned, I think you'll find. You talked about this radical future. Do you want to just tell me a bit more about that? Because
I think I was reading something the other day which I thought was quite interesting, just around people are thinking that the cost of things is going to go back to how it was, that it's just going to continue to get more and more expensive. I don't think this is just a business problem. I think this is a world problem. I think the systems that they're creaking at the edges. Everything is up in the air at the moment. I can't remember a period of time in my life where I experienced so much instability and uncertainty.
No.
So the radical future that I was talking about was, I think that the way that organizations are designed are going to be very different. And again, I refer to my kind of experience in venture capital world, VC world, where when we are building a business from scratch, it's materially different to how organizations today that we're all familiar with are structured. We don't have hierarchies. We don't have static organization design structures of spans and layers, all of that. What we have is a small group of really expert senior people, a huge pool of fractional leaders, the best in the market, who are on a retainer basis.
do you know anybody who does fractional HR? Hey, thank you. Go on. Back to you.
And then on the side of that, so say for example, the businesses that I've seen have done really, really successful adoption of AI, which is a necessary evil, and if it's done well, it does work, but it still relies on humans setting the parameters correctly up front.
More skilled humans.
Exactly. Yeah. But what we've seen, so say for example, as a rough estimate, 50% of your workforce goes to AI or for tasks. What you then have is a very different operating structure, which was much more nimble, much more fungible, smaller numbers of roles, but much broader roles. And I think there's a massive opportunity now. I think people are so bored doing the same thing day in, day out. So what we've actually managed to do is broaden people's roles so that there's multiple people in a team that can do the same job. And actually much more focused on getting the people in the environment almost like a cell rather than an operating structure to determine what the roles are to do the work. And I think it goes back to that kind of age-old advantage of, if you really understand what's closest to your customer, the work that gets done, that's the sweet spot. That's what you should always be focused on as a business leader, to understand how your business should be designed. And I think we lose that so often. And what I've seen work really well, it's so much more empowering, it's so much more dynamic, it's liberal, it's flexible, people are doing multiple things, engagement's higher. It's just a very different way of designing. And I don't think there's a single structure that works, but what I am seeing, particularly in new businesses where you've got the opportunity to build from scratch, a very different approach to how it works. And I think whether we like it or not, because most organizations are driven by profit, then there is going to be at some point huge expectation from shareholders that, well, what's the opportunity here? And it's always going to be a profit thing. And I think, again, it's becoming quite blunt, isn't it, the profit angle?
And that new structure, again, just back to the point on leadership, how very different is that to how people have been used to managing individuals? You've got people then, multiple complexity around their layers and their roles. They're generally more senior people. It's just different, again, isn't it?
More self-managed.
More self-managed. And what's their job versus what the leadership role used to be is very different. So it's again, and how, as a HR professional, someone senior in HR that are trying to manage this change, there's a lot to do to get to the point where they get ahead of this in terms of new structure and shape of organisations, isn't there?
And I think for HR, I'm concerned about where HR is at the moment, because I think the businesses where HR is understood as a necessary evil, and that's not always a reflection on the HR function itself. Businesses are going to be looking for every single opportunity possible to reduce cost, because they still thrive and they're still based on profit. So, if I was giving advice to any HR director out there or chief people officer, it's getting ahead of the curve of this to make sure that you're leading the conversation on what that could look like. Because
That
I
org
would
design
imagine
piece.
the best businesses will always keep HR because their HR functions are fantastic. HR functions that are just doing the bare minimum, that are doing policy and process, that stuff can be outsourced. So I think there's going to be a very different type of CPO that comes to the fore because CEOs are going to need chief people officers who are innovators, who are disruptors, who show them the
With
art
a
of the
proper
possible.
board position.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And I think, and so that's great for us as HR people because that means that you are part of the, you know, part of the imagination of how this all happens and part of the strategic think tank, if you like.
Great. Yeah. Amazing. Wow.
Lots to think
All
about.
very easy. Simple.
Easy.
Do it tomorrow. Jordan, thank you for giving us some insights and
Pleasure.
and also
And your
Kelly
time,
for the,
yeah.
and your
Pleasure.
time.
No, pleasure.
It really is really great to hear your insights, and we wish you every success with Peach. And if you have any topics that you would like us to cover on A Bit of Light Relief, hopefully on a very serious and difficult subject, we've brought a bit of fun to you today. We look forward to welcoming you to our next episode, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.